Picture this. You've got a 6-year-old girl, right? She's in the first grade.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And she just learns from some older third grade boy that Pokemon cards are actually considered super valuable.
Right, which is basically playground currency.
Exactly. So she's pretty artistic, and she goes home and hand draws 3 original Pokemon cards.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but she doesn't stop at just drawing them, you know? The very next day, she convinces that same third grade boy to help her sneak into the school office.
Wait, really? A 6-year-old?
A 6-year-old. They sneak in to use the color copier, and she prints out like 10 unauthorized copies of her original artwork.
That is amazing. That's a tiny bootlegger.
It totally is. And then she actually bypasses all the other kids entirely because, I mean, she knows they don't have any real capital.
Smart. Kids are broke.
Right. So she waits for the after-school program, and she specifically approaches the parents who are arriving for pickup, and she pitches them.
You're kidding.
Nope. And she actually manages to sell one to a random dad.
Which I have to assume naturally results in the school calling her mother in a total panic.
Oh, absolutely. They demand a meeting immediately because this tiny first grader is basically running a rogue supply chain on school grounds.
I mean, I get why the school is mad, but that's incredible.
But the absolute best part of this is the car ride home. The mother turns to her and asks, how did you possibly decide to charge that parent $5 for a piece of paper?
Because $5 in the 90s is like $20 today.
Yeah, exactly. And the kid just shrugs and goes, I just asked him what he was willing to pay.
Oh my gosh. That is brilliant. It's just perfect price discovery.
Right.
She didn't set some arbitrary ceiling. She just let the market dictate the exact value.
Yeah.
It's this unbelievable instinct for hustle and inventory and sales at an age when most kids are, literally just figuring out how to tie their shoes.
And honestly, that little anecdote tells you everything you need to know about the DNA of our subject today, because the mother in that story, that's Christina Wallace.
Ah, okay. That tracks.
Yeah, she grew up to be a Harvard Business School lecturer, a 5-time Tony-nominated Broadway producer.
Which is wild on its own.
Totally wild. She's also a former management consultant and the author of this incredible book called The Portfolio Life. She actually refers to herself as a human Venn diagram.
I love that phrase. And we really do have a fascinating stack of material to go through today.
We really do.
It's anchored by this incredibly detailed, in-depth interview she did on the Translated YouTube channel, You Say, Jackie.
Yeah, and the mission for today, for you, the listener, as you join us on this deep dive, is to fundamentally rethink the entire structure of your career.
Basically, we're decoding how to future-proof your livelihood, how to avoid catastrophic burnout.
Right.
And maybe most importantly, how to build an identity that is substantially bigger than whatever random job title happens to be printed on your business card.
Because the core premise we're exploring today is, frankly, a direct challenge to the advice practically all of us received growing up.
Oh, totally. The classic, pick a major and stick to it advice.
Right. The premise here is that in an era where AI is just upending the entire knowledge economy, the absolute most dangerous thing you can do right now is just have one job.
Which, like you said, flies in the face of all traditional wisdom. We're taught to specialize, to pick a lane, and just grind your way to the top of a single ladder.
Yeah, head down, stay focused.
Exactly. But as we start to unpack the mechanics of her framework today and the real value of failing productively, the reason for this massive shift becomes crystal clear.
Because being a single point of failure is dangerous.
It's an existential risk. Having your entire professional and psychological identity tied to one specific function, you just can't do it anymore.
Let's actually look at the macro environment to understand why that risk is accelerating so fast right now. We hear about AI literally constantly, right?
Non-stop.
But I want to look at what companies like OpenAI and Anthropic are actually doing when it comes to their own hiring practices.
That's always the tell. Look at who they hire.
Exactly. If you look at their job boards, they aren't just staffing up, armies of back-end coders anymore.
Not at all. They are aggressively hiring storytellers.
Which seems so counterintuitive for a tech giant.
It does, but they are bringing in editorial staff, content strategists, and people whose primary expertise is basically making meaning out of total chaos.
And to really grasp why a massive tech company wants a storyteller, we have to track the collapsing cost of executing a business idea.
Christina breaks this down so perfectly in the interview.
She really does. She talks about how if you go back to the dot-com boom, or even just around 2011, founders needed millions of dollars just to buy the physical servers.
Right, just to host a basic tech company.
Yeah. Then AWS and Shopify come along, and the cost drops to maybe, what, $100,000?
Something like that. And then 5 years ago, it was maybe 15,000.
Right. And today,
Yeah.
you can spin up a prototype, register a domain, and launch a whole test balloon for about $500.
The barrier to entry for pure execution has effectively hit zero.
It's wild.
It is. I mean, if you, the listener, have a basic idea for an app today, you absolutely do not need a team of engineers.
No, you just use an AI coding agent to build the back end and an AI design agent to make it look super professional.
But here's the catch. Because millions of other people now have access to those exact same frictionless tools, this new problem emerges.
All the outputs start to look exactly the same.
Exactly. It's a sea of sameness.
Okay, let me push back on this idea of execution being totally dead, though.
Sure, go for it.
Even if the barrier's super low, doesn't somebody still have to orchestrate the AI? Like, shouldn't we all just be focusing on becoming the absolute fastest executors using these new tools?
I mean, you can certainly try, but you're basically competing in a race to the bottom.
Really? How so?
Because when the heavy lifting of execution, the coding, the formatting, the basic data analysis is commoditized, speed just isn't a defensible moat anymore.
Because the AI will always eventually be faster than you.
Always. You can't outtype a machine. So the value in the economy shifts entirely to the questions of why you and why now.
It shifts away from the how, basically.
Exactly. It shifts to your proprietary insight, your unique access to specialized data, and frankly, your lived human experience.
And Christina actually learned this explicitly during her time at the Boston Consulting Group. She talks about this brutal so what framework they use.
Oh, that sounds intense.
It's wild. You could spend like 80 hours running this massive, mathematically flawless data analysis for a huge corporate client.
Just crunching numbers all week.
Right. You build the models, you make the spreadsheets perfect, but when you present it to the partners at BCG, they don't care about the math at all.
They just look at it and ask, so what?
Exactly. So what?
Because the client isn't paying for the math. They're paying for the strategic implication of the math.
Yeah. Don't tell me what the data is. Tell me why it fundamentally alters our business strategy moving forward.
And an AI can run that raw data analysis far more accurately than you ever could. But the AI doesn't understand the internal political dynamics of the client's boardroom.
Right. It doesn't know that the VP of marketing hates the VP of sales.
Exactly. It doesn't know why the data matters on an emotional or a strategic level. Humans have to connect that raw output to the bigger picture.
I really want to stop and drill down into this whole concept of storytelling, though.
Yeah, let's unpack it.
Because honestly, it feels like one of those empty corporate buzzwords that just get slapped onto LinkedIn profiles right next to it, like synergy and ideation.
Oh, totally. It's a buzzword.
Right. So if a large language model like Claude or ChatGPT can write a structurally perfect marketing script in 3 seconds, how is human storytelling actually a real moat?
To understand the moat, we have to look mechanically at how an LLM actually functions under the hood.
Okay, let's get into the mechanic.
An AI is not actually thinking. It is performing predictive token generation based purely on probability.
It's just guessing the next word.
Exactly. It looks at its massive training data and predicts the next most statistically likely word. And because of that mathematical architecture, it is fundamentally an engine of reversion to the mean.
Reversion to the mean, meaning it's average.
Yes. It produces the absolute average of all human thought. Christina actually refers to this exact output as slop.
Slop. I love that. It's like blending every single color of paint together, right? You don't get this brilliant masterpiece. You just get a perfectly competent but entirely forgettable gray mush.
That is the perfect analogy. AI gives you a flawless, frictionless gray.
Yeah.
So to stand out from the gray slop, you need an edge. You need actual idiosyncrasies.
You need to be a little weird.
You have to be.
Yeah.
You need the weird, seemingly totally unrelated connections that a statistical model would just smooth over. Because to a computer, they're mathematically improbable.
Right.
Human storytelling is really just the curation of those unique fingerprints to forge a genuine, resonant connection with another human being.
So if blending in and just being a one-dimensional executor is the fast path to total irrelevance, how do you actually go about curating that unique fingerprint?
That is the million-dollar question.
How do you become something more than just a single data point? Well, we need to look at the architecture of what she calls a human Venn diagram.
And Christina's origin story is practically the blueprint for how this diversified identity gets built in the real world.
And importantly, it wasn't like she had some grand strategic master plan at age 10.
No, her diversified identity was initially born out of intense isolation and just pure necessity.
Yeah, she was a literal math prodigy. She jokes that she actually speaks 3 distinct languages: math, music, and English.
Which is a pretty unique combo right there.
Very. And she was attending this very small, pretty conservative Christian school, and she was so far ahead of her grade level that the teachers simply didn't know what to do with her.
They were just out of their depth.
Exactly. So they
Oh.
literally stuck her in a corner with a textbook and just let her teach herself math, all the way up through 11th grade calculus.
By herself.
By herself.
But that level of intellectual acceleration, especially in a tiny school environment, comes with a truly devastating social cost.
Devastating is the right word, because she also hit this massive growth spurt, right? She was 6 feet tall by the 7th grade.
Oh, wow. That's tough.
So she's towering over all the boys. She's intellectually leaps and bounds ahead of literally everyone. And she's in a tiny class of maybe 14 kids.
The perfect recipe for being targeted.
She was brutally bullied. I mean, she would literally take Nancy Drew mystery books into the bathroom during her lunch breaks, locking herself in a stall just so she wouldn't have to face the total humiliation of sitting by herself in the cafeteria.
It is such a painful image to think about.
It really is.
But when she reflects on that era now, she views it as the crucible that forged her greatest asset.
How so?
Because by being completely ostracized, the option of just fitting in was taken off the table entirely.
Oh, she couldn't fit in even if she tried.
Exactly. There was no temptation to play dumb or shrink her personality or mask her intelligence just to be accepted by the popular kids, because they weren't going to accept her anyway.
Wow. So she was basically forced to build the psychological muscle of just going her own path.
Precisely. She learned how to make decisions and pursue her own interests without first having to look around the room to see what the group consensus was.
Which most of us spend our whole lives doing.
Right. She became incredibly comfortable being the anomaly. And that intense isolation finally breaks when she turns 15. She gets accepted into an arts boarding school, the Interlochen Arts Academy.
And suddenly, for the first time in her entire life, she finds her tribe.
Yes, she makes actual friends.
And she has this profound realization where she goes, oh, wait, I'm actually not a loser. I just needed a completely fresh start away from these kids who have known me since I was awkwardly figuring out life on the 3rd grade playground.
And that reset is so vital to her story. Because up until her senior year of high school, her entire trajectory was pointed toward one very specific, highly specialized goal.
Right. She wanted to attend a strict music conservatory like Juilliard.
Yeah, she was a classically trained pianist. She sang in the choir, and she played the cello.
Which, side note, she actually only picked up the cello in middle school because she realized orchestras only need 1 pianist, but they need 8 cellos.
That is her analytical mind at work even back then. Always looking for the competitive advantage.
Seriously. But when it actually comes time to audition for Juilliard, she runs headfirst into the reality of what a conservatory life actually looks like.
It's grueling.
It's incredibly narrow. She looks down the barrel of that specific future and realizes she would have to completely give up math.
Which was her first language.
Right. And furthermore, she realizes she fundamentally does not want to spend 6 hours a day locked in a tiny, soundproof practice studio entirely by herself, obsessively perfecting just 2 measures of a Beethoven sonata.
It sounds like a beautiful nightmare.
It really does. So in this massive pivot, she chooses Emory University, a liberal arts college, instead.
And this choice is where the whole Venn diagram concept truly begins to overlap. She arrives at Emory as a math major,
Okay.
but she's on a scholarship, so she needs a work-study job just to make ends meet. She looks around the campus, and she notices that the theater kids seem infinitely more vibrant and fun than the incredibly serious music students she was used to hanging around.
I mean, theater kids are always the fun ones.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So she takes this minimum wage job as a stage manager, really just to be in their orbit.
And within a single semester, the theater department literally pulls her aside and tells her she has a natural gift for this and that she should major in theater.
Which is huge.
It is. Now remember, coming from the hyper-rigid world of classical music, this was a mind-bending concept for her.
Oh, the sunk cost fallacy in classical music is insane.
It's massive. In the conservatory mindset, if you haven't been relentlessly practicing your specific instrument since you were 6 years old, the ship has sailed.
It's just too late.
You are too late. But here she is at 18, discovering that it actually isn't too late to adopt a beginner's mind. So she decides to double major in math and theater.
And this right here is the foundational building block of her entire life framework. The acquisition of orthogonal skills.
Orthogonal meaning at right angles.
Exactly. Skills that are at right angles to one another, skills that don't naturally go together. Because she is at a liberal arts college, her theater degree isn't just one narrow, hyper-focused thing.
Right.
She specializes in directing, sure, but she is forced to study playwriting and acting and set design and lighting, and she is combining all of that with high-level math, physics, and political science.
And she's applying it all immediately in the real world. She's actively working in professional regional theater while taking classes, basically just to pay her rent.
Hustling from day one.
Yeah, she is learning how to hustle, how to build networks across completely different social stratas, and how to create multiple streams of income before she even graduates.
Which is so critical because the mechanics of theater directing are functionally identical to the mechanics of entrepreneurship.
Okay, wait, break that down for me. How does directing a college play map to launching a tech startup?
Think about the role of the theater director. You start with this abstract idea or a script.
Okay,
You have virtually no money, maybe a few $100s, and a roll of duct tape.
sounds about right for theater.
And you have to convince a highly diverse group of specialists, the actors, lighting designers, carpenters, to buy into your vision.
You have to pitch them.
Exactly. You build a terrible, broken version of the product in early rehearsals. You test it. You see where the pacing drags. You fix it. And you relentlessly iterate until opening night.
Oh, I see it now.
You are managing fragile personalities, scarce resources, and a very hard deadline. It is the exact same tight judgment loop as launching a minimum viable product in a tech startup.
I see the logic there, I really do, but let me challenge the broader philosophy for a second.
Challenge away.
We are culturally conditioned to absolutely revere the master of a single domain. You know, the person who puts their legendary 10,000 hours into the violin.
The Malcolm Gladwell model.
Right. Christina is essentially choosing to be a one-woman band. Doesn't building a Venn diagram out of your life run the risk of diluting your expertise? Doesn't it just make you a master of none?
If you are judging mastery by a single hyperspecific vertical, then perhaps, yeah. But the Venn diagram redefines mastery as the intersection of those skills.
The intersection.
Yes, it is not about being the single best mathematician in the world or the absolute best theater director on Broadway. It is about being the absolute only person in the room who holds the unique intersection of complex mathematics, theater directing, physics, and storytelling.
Ah, so your category of one.
Exactly. That intersection is the moat. It provides a lateral perspective that the pure 10,000-hour specialist is completely blind to.
And that lateral perspective proves incredibly valuable. But as we are about to see in her story, it absolutely does not immunize you against failure.
No, it does not.
In fact, having that level of ambition and breadth almost guarantees that you will eventually experience a truly spectacular failure. Which brings us to the anatomy of a productive failure.
Right, because her journey post-college eventually leads her to the Harvard Business School.
Yeah.
And the macroeconomic timing here is just crazy.
Unbelievable timing.
She begins her MBA exactly 3 weeks before the collapse of Lehman Brothers in 2008.
The global financial crisis detonates. Overnight, the traditional golden paths for Harvard MBAs, investment banking, private equity, high-end consulting, they just evaporate.
Gone in a week.
Completely gone. And the career services department at HBS goes into full panic mode because they realize they're going to have an entire graduating class of unemployed MBAs.
Which would utterly destroy their prestigious rankings.
Exactly. So they pivot hard. They start aggressively pushing the students to start their own companies because if you launch a startup, the university can technically classify you as employed upon graduation.
That is a very convenient loophole for Harvard.
Isn't it? So entrepreneurship, which had been this somewhat niche, quirky path for MBAs, suddenly becomes a sheer survival strategy.
And because she has that theater directing background, the ability to build something out of duct tape and sheer vision, she actually feels uniquely equipped for this chaotic environment.
Right. So she does a brief, intense stint at BCG, which she essentially just treats as a paid finishing school to learn the actual mechanics of corporate operations, and then she takes the leap.
She becomes a founder.
Yes. She co-founds a women's clothing startup called Quincy Apparel with a very close friend from business school.
And this venture becomes the ultimate crucible for her. She discovers very quickly that she is deeply in love with the 0 to 1 stage of a starter.
That creation phase.
Yeah, the sheer terrifying chaos of sitting in an empty room, hypothesizing what the product should be, testing it, realizing you were totally wrong, and pivoting 3 times before dinner.
It's an adrenaline rush. But the thrill of the 0 to 1 creation phase morphs into an absolute nightmare when they reach the scaling phase.
Specifically, the mechanics of hiring and firing.
Yeah, she is incredibly candid about this in the interview. She fully admits she was an abysmal manager at that stage.
It's hard.
It is. She had never hired anyone before. She hired the wrong profiles, and when they clearly didn't work out, she lacked the managerial courage to fire them fast enough.
The whole postmortem of Quincy Apparel is really a textbook study in the structural flaws that can doom even the most brilliant founders.
What was the biggest flaw, in your view?
Well, the first major flaw was the co-founder dynamic itself. She and her partner were just too similar.
They overlapped too much.
Exactly. They had heavily overlapping skill sets, which meant they also shared identical blind spots. They found themselves constantly stepping on each other's toes, redoing each other's work, and crucially, neither of them had the expertise to recognize what good actually looked like in the operational areas where they were both efficient.
But the truly fatal flaw, the thing that actually killed the company, was the capital structure. They took venture capital money to fund what was fundamentally a retail apparel business.
Which is like mixing oil and water.
Right. Now, why would they do that? You have to look at the environment back in 2011. There was intense pattern matching happening in the venture capital world.
Oh, VCs love a pattern.
They do. If you were a founder with a Harvard or Stanford MBA living in New York or San Francisco, and your business had a website, VCs were practically throwing tech startup money at you.
To understand why this was a fatal mismatch, we need to look at the impartial mechanics of VC math. It's so important.
Yeah, break down the math for me.
Okay, venture capital portfolios are built on the core assumption that 90% of their investments will literally go to zero.
They expect most of them to fail.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Therefore, the few winners have to generate 100x returns just to cover the losses of the failures. Now, software companies can achieve 100x returns because the marginal cost of replicating a piece of code is virtually zero.
You build the app once, you sell it 1,000,000 times.
Right. It costs you nothing to sell the millionth copy. But Quincy Apparel wasn't software. It was retail. Exactly. The economics of physical inventory are fundamentally different. Every single time you sell a jacket, you have to buy more fabric, pay for more manufacturing, and manage complex shipping logistics.
The costs scale with the revenue.
Yes. Retail simply cannot scale at the exponential, zero marginal cost rate that a VC fund requires to make their math work.
So when Quincy Apparel hit its first real operational bumps, what happened?
The investors, who were entirely conditioned by software metrics, didn't know how to advise a physical supply chain business, and they simply pulled the plug. They stopped funding them.
And the business collapses. Roughly 2 years in, they just shut the doors. The professional fallout is obviously bad, but the personal fallout for Christina is catastrophic.
It's devastating.
She is suddenly holding $170,000 in student loan debt. She has an active balance of exactly $0 in her checking account.
Oh my God.
Yeah. She is forced to pay her exorbitant New York City rent using a high-interest credit card. She goes home, curls up in a ball on her kitchen floor, and just uncontrollably sobs. She doesn't fully get out of bed for 3 weeks.
And we really need to examine the psychology of why she was on the floor. Because it wasn't just the loss of money, though that was terrifying.
Right, it was deeper.
It was the absolute annihilation of her identity. She had fallen into the exact trap that Silicon Valley actively preaches, the all-in founder mentality.
Hustle culture at its peak.
Exactly. When you strip away your hobbies, distance yourself from your friends, sacrifice your physical health, and pour 100% of your psychological existence into the title of founder and CEO. When the startup dies, you die with it.
It's a total existential collapse. But, and here is where the story actually pivots, when she finally manages to scrape herself off the floor, cold reality sets in.
The rent is due.
The rent is due. She looks at the calendar and realizes she needs a paying job within 30 days, because that is when the next rent payment hits the credit card, and the card is maxed out.
So she has a hard, fast deadline.
Yes. And what she does next is one of the most intense, systematic networking sprints I have ever encountered. She executes 70 coffee chats in 30 days.
It is a total masterclass in aggressive self-excavation. She's operating at her absolute lowest possible point. She feels like a public failure, a complete imposter.
Yeah.
Yet she reaches out to her orthogonal network people from her boarding school days, her theater days, Emory, Harvard, and the startup ecosystem.
Wait, hold on. Let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
If I am sitting in her shoes, I'm completely broke, my business just publicly cratered, and my ego is completely shattered, how on earth do I reach out to 70 highly successful people without reeking of sheer desperation? Like a sonar ping of pure panic.
That is the genius of her approach.
Yeah.
She didn't send out a sonar ping for a job.
She didn't ask for a job.
No. If you ask people for a job when you are desperate, they will instinctively recoil. It's human nature. Instead, she treated these 70 people like a personal advisory board. She asked them for data.
Data.
Yes. And because she was functionally bankrupt, she actually had to make them buy their own coffee.
That's hilarious. And humbling.
Very. But because she had spent the previous 10 years being genuinely helpful to these people and building a diverse, supportive network, they were more than willing to show up for her.
Okay, so when she sat down with them, she didn't hand them a resume. What did she do?
She asked them 3 highly calibrated questions. First, when have you seen me at my happiest?
Oh, that's a great question.
Second, what is the specific thing you come to me for? And third, where do you see me standing out against my peers?
She is literally crowdsourcing her own identity because she has lost the ability to see herself clearly.
Exactly. She needed a mirror. And the data that came back from these 70 conversations was remarkably consistent. To the first question, when is she happiest? They all pointed out that she thrives when she is the principal of her own time.
Meaning she hates being micromanaged.
Basically, even back at BCG, she despised being at the mercy of the client's sudden demands. She needed to control her own calendar.
Okay. And to the second question, what do people come to her for? The answer is almost universally to find the narrative thread.
There's that storytelling piece again.
Exactly. Whether her friends were trying to pivot their careers or founders were struggling to pitch a product, they always came to Christina to find the story in the noise.
And to the third question, where does she stand out? Her network highlighted her incredibly high tolerance for the chaotic 0 to 1 stage of business, her massive cross-disciplinary network in New York, and her absolute superpower for public speaking.
Okay, so she has all this raw data, but how does finding the narrative thread and liking a chaotic environment actually translate into a paycheck? I mean, you can't go onto a corporate job board and type in 0 to 1 storyteller who refuses to be micromanaged.
Exactly. You cannot apply for that job because it doesn't exist in a drop-down menu.
Yeah.
But having that exact data allowed her to construct a highly customized target profile. She looked at the intersection of those traits and deduced. I need to remain in early-stage startups because they tolerate chaos and value cross-disciplinary thinkers. I need to stay in New York to leverage my network. And I need to focus on a role that requires public speaking and narrative building, which essentially means marketing, evangelism, or launching new products.
And the precision of that profile paid off instantly. Within 2 days of defining exactly what she was looking for, she found the perfect fit.
2 days.
2 days. Startup Institute, which was this educational company currently operating only in Boston, was looking to expand. They wanted to launch a New York office.
Oh, perfect.
It was. They essentially needed someone to build a new business inside the safety of an existing company. She pitched herself as the founding director of Startup Institute New York, and it was a perfect match.
That rapid turnaround from literally sobbing on the kitchen floor to directing a major expansion really highlights the immense compound value of a productive failure.
Yeah, she talks about this a lot.
She frequently tells her current students at Harvard that if she could go back, she would do everything differently to save Quincy Apparel. But simultaneously, she would change absolutely nothing.
That's quite a paradox.
It is. But because that traumatic failure accelerated her practical career experience by 5 or 6 years, it was invaluable.
Let's break down that mechanism a bit. Why does failure accelerate learning faster than success?
It basically comes down to the speed of the tight judgment loop. If you take a job in a massive Fortune 500 corporation, you might spend 2 years working on one tiny fragment of a product launch.
Right, you're just a cog in the machine.
You never see the whole picture. Even in high-end consulting, you diagnose the problem and hand the client a beautiful slide deck, but you rarely stick around to see the messy reality of the actual execution.
Oh, true. You just fly out on Thursday.
Exactly. But in a startup, you own the entire cycle. You diagnose a problem on Monday, draft a plan on Tuesday, execute it on Wednesday, and realize it failed completely by Thursday.
It's compressed.
Very. You are forced to run that judgment loop thousands of times in a compressed window. You develop an intuitive, visceral business judgment that simply cannot be taught in a classroom.
So this profound trauma of the Quincy apparel collapse leads to a massive paradigm shift for her. It cements the realization that your identity must be aggressively decoupled from your economic output.
Yes.
And this realization is the true genesis of the portfolio life framework.
The portfolio life is basically a structural defense mechanism against the volatility of the modern world. It is built upon four fundamental pillars: identity, optionality, diversification, and flexibility.
Let's dive deep into these pillars. Identity is the bedrock, right? It's the radical and, frankly, in our culture, deeply subversive idea that you possess inherent value simply because you exist, regardless of what you are currently producing for the capitalist machine.
It's sad that that's a radical idea, but it is.
It really is. And since 2011, the very first line of her professional biography has not been a job title. It has simply been human Venn diagram.
The second and third pillars, optionality and diversification, borrow heavily from portfolio theory in finance. Just as a wealth manager would never advise you to put 100% of your retirement savings into a single, highly volatile tech stock.
Which would be insane.
Totally insane. You should not put 100% of your identity into a single employer. You must diversify to create personal anti-fragility.
This is where I like to think about it like civil engineering.
Oh, I like this. Go on.
It's the difference between building your life like a single load-bearing pillar versus building it like a suspension bridge.
Okay.
If your life is a single pillar, your job, and you get fired, the entire structure of your reality crashes down. You are back on the kitchen floor sobbing. But a suspension bridge distributes the weight and the tension across hundreds of individual cables.
I see where you're going with this.
You have your day job, your side hustle, your role in a community choir, your identity as a parent, your weekend running club. If one of those cables snaps, like if you lose the job, the bridge shudders, but it holds.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it. And she offers a very grounded, super vulnerable example of how this suspension bridge actually holds weight in daily life.
The parenting story, right?
Yes, she calls it the gentle parenting failure. She describes a day where she is just having an awful time with her kids. Everyone is melting down. The house is a mess. The gentle parenting techniques she read about online just aren't working, and she yells.
As parents do.
As we all do. But in that moment, the internal critic screams, "You are a terrible parent."
But because her identity is a suspension bridge, one snapped cable doesn't bring her down.
Exactly. Because her identity is diversified, her immediate reflexive counterthought is, yes, this is a bad parenting moment, but I'm also a Tony-nominated producer and a respected professor.
It sounds almost humorous to say that to yourself.
It does, but it is a vital mechanism for emotional buttressing. If your entire identity is restricted to mom, and you are failing at being a mom in that specific hour, you have no psychological safety net to fall back on. Diversification saves you from total collapse.
It's essentially applying the mindset of a venture capitalist to your own life, which she actually wrote about in her previous book, New to Big.
Yes. Think about it. Large corporations often fail at innovation because they are terrified of risk. They place massive, existential bets on single, linear product launches. If the launch fails, careers are destroyed.
Heads roll.
Right. Venture capitalists, by contrast, place a portfolio of small, calculated bets. They run cheap, rapid experiments. They distribute small amounts of capital to 50 different ideas. And crucially, they are entirely willing to kill the bad ideas quickly without attaching personal shame to the failure.
Oh, that startup failed. Moving on.
Exactly. The portfolio life asks you to adopt that VC mindset. Take small shots on goal with your interests, join a board, start a newsletter, take a pottery class, let the universe tell you which bets have traction, and just abandon the ones that don't.
And that leads directly to the fourth pillar, flexibility, which is the mechanism of rebalancing the portfolio. Because your life in your 20s requires a very different asset allocation than your life in your 40s.
Oh, vastly different.
The trigger to rebalance, according to Christina, is a concept she calls sustained friction.
Sustained friction is basically the operational dashboard warning light. It occurs when a life structure that used to work perfectly, you enjoyed your commute, you had time for your friends, your budget made sense, suddenly feels full of persistent, grinding speed bumps.
It's not just a bad week, it's a chronic sense of drag on the system.
Right. It could be a new manager you clash with, or the onset of a chronic health issue, or, as is the case for so many millennials right now, the staggering, system-breaking cost of childcare.
Oh, don't even get me started. In cities like New York or Boston, childcare can easily hit $40,000 a year per child.
It's wild. And when you introduce that kind of financial friction, it is a glaring signal that your current allocation of time, energy, and resources is no longer serving your current season of life. You have to rebalance the portfolio.
But look at it from the perspective of someone just starting out. Let's say I am a 23-year-old listener. I just graduated with $80,000 in student loans, and I landed a grueling 100-hour-a-week investment banking job.
A very common scenario.
Right. I don't have the luxury of building a beautiful suspension bridge of hobbies and side hustles right now. I just need to survive the pressure cooker. Does the portfolio life even apply to me?
It absolutely applies, but it requires ruthless boundaries.
Hmm.
Christina teaches at Harvard Business School, so she sees this specific scenario constantly. Students tell her, I just need to put my head down, grind in private equity for 3 years, pay off the massive debt, and then I'll start building a balanced life.
Which sounds reasonable on paper.
It does, and she fully acknowledges that there are specific seasons of life where you must aggressively overallocate your portfolio into the single stock that pays the highest dividend. But she warns intensely against the trap of lifestyle inflation.
Ah, the classic 2 to 3 year corporate stint trap.
Exactly, because what happens during those 3 years of grinding? You are building neural pathways and financial habits. You get accustomed to the corporate expense account, the luxury gym membership, the high-end apartment.
You get used to the nice things.
You do. Then suddenly the debt is paid off. You finally have massive free cash flow. But instead of leaving, you tell yourself, I'll just stay 6 more months to build a massive savings cushion.
I'll just wait for the next bonus cycle.
Right. Fast forward 5 years, you have a mortgage, your kids are enrolled in $30,000 a year private schools, and you show up at your 10-year college reunion as a managing director who is utterly trapped and deeply miserable. The golden handcuffs click shut.
So what is the tactical, mechanical solution for that 23-year-old? How do they avoid the handcuffs?
Her tactical advice is aggressive, but mathematically sound. If you are taking a brutal job exclusively for the financial utility of debt repayment, you need to write your resignation email on your very first day in the office. Day 1, you draft the email, and you schedule it to send on the exact date your spreadsheet says your debt will be cleared.
Okay, writing your resignation letter on day 1 sounds incredibly liberating in theory, but let's be real. Doesn't that breed a sense of detachment that might actually get you fired before you can even pay the debt off?
It's not about detachment. It's about protecting your capacity. It creates a psychological firewall. It prevents you from fully assimilating your identity into the firm.
Ah, I see.
By having that hard-out date locked in, you guarantee that you will start actively planning your next portfolio move networking, exploring orthogonal interests months before the exit date, rather than waking up a decade later wondering where your life went.
And protecting that capacity transitions perfectly into the operational engine of this entire framework, operating at 85%.
This is my favorite part.
So good. Because if you are going to manage a complex, multidimensional suspension bridge of a life, if you are juggling being a professor, a podcast host, an investor, a spouse, and a parent, you absolutely cannot run the system at maximum velocity.
This concept is lifted directly from the world of factory operations management and queuing theory. The absolute best-run manufacturing plants in the world intentionally do not run their machinery at 100% capacity.
Which feels entirely counterintuitive to the hustle culture mindset of maximizing every waking second.
It feels counterintuitive, but it is a mathematical law of complex systems.
Yeah.
Think of a highway. If a highway is at 85% capacity, cars are moving fluidly.
Traffic is flowing.
Right. But the moment it hits 100% capacity, it doesn't just slow down, it becomes a parking lot. The total system freeze.
Gridlock.
Gridlock. Factories schedule strategic downtime. They deliberately leave 15% of their capacity completely open. Why? For routine maintenance, to fix sudden machine errors, or to have the slack in the system to absorb a massive, unexpected surge order from their best client.
So if you schedule a factory or human life at 100%, what happens when you encounter a totally normal, predictable disruption?
Like a flat tire on the way to a meeting, or your kid gets a fever and can't go to daycare.
Exactly. The moment that normal hiccup occurs, your system is pushed to 120%. And a system running at 120% doesn't just run faster. It breaks. Parts shear off. You suffer a catastrophic burnout.
So Christina deliberately engineers her life to run at 85%. And she does this by literally treating rest as a non-negotiable hard appointment on her calendar.
Tell him about the naps.
Oh, the naps are legendary. On weekends, from 1:00 p.m. to 3:00 p.m., her kids are mandated to have quiet time in their rooms, and she goes to her own room, shuts the door, and takes a 2-hour nap. She explicitly mentions the profound, almost decadent luxury of allowing her body to wake up naturally without an alarm clock.
She applies the same rigid discipline to her physical health, too. She schedules her workouts into her calendar just like she would a meeting with the dean of Harvard.
It's a non-negotiable block.
Right. Her assistant knows the rules. Those workout blocks can be shifted an hour left or right to accommodate a true emergency, but they can never, under any circumstances, be deleted.
As Christina points out, it is infinitely easier to fiercely protect a boundary that already exists on your calendar than it is to try and magically conjure free time out of thin air.
If it is not visibly blocked on the calendar, it simply does not exist.
It requires an extreme level of logistical discipline, especially when you factor in a partner. She and her husband actually utilize a family Gantt chart to map out the entire year.
A Gantt chart for a marriage. I love it.
They plot out all of their major professional deliverables, their travel, and their known high-stress periods. For example, her husband essentially serves as the mayor of a town, and twice a year, he has these grueling 2-week legislative sessions where he is locked in meetings from 6:00 p.m. until midnight, every single night.
And because that massive drain on his capacity is mapped out on the Gantt chart months in advance, she knows that during those 2 weeks, she is 100% solo parenting.
No surprises.
Exactly. Therefore, she deliberately ensures that she does not schedule any major product launches, book deadlines, or out-of-state speaking gigs during that specific window.
They even have a hard contractual rule within their marriage regarding their writing.
Oh, right, because they're both authors.
Yes. Only one of them is legally allowed to be actively drafting a book at any given time. He writes fiction, she writes nonfiction, but they never allow their heavy, taxing creative sprints to overlap and drain the household capacity simultaneously.
That's just brilliant capacity management. They also rely on this framework called the 100% marriage equation, which she adopted from a conversation between Brené Brown and Tim Ferriss.
The premise is that a successful partnership needs to bring 100% capacity to the household every day to keep things running smoothly.
But it is a total myth that it will always be a clean 50-50 split.
Right. It fluctuates dynamically. There are days when one partner walks through the front door, looks at the other, and says, I am completely tapped out. The world beat me down today. I only have 30% of my usual capacity.
We've all had those days.
And the beauty of the system is that the other partner can look at the Gantt chart, realize they had the slack in their 85% system, and say, okay, I've got the remaining 70% tonight. I will cook dinner. I will handle the bedtime routines. I will carry the load.
It completely neutralizes the toxic habit of marital scorekeeping.
Exactly. As long as the couple collectively hits 100%, and one person isn't permanently exploiting the system by staying at 30%, the partnership survives without building resentment.
Okay, devil's advocate time.
Let's hear it.
I know for a fact that many of our listeners are highly ambitious, type A individuals. And to a highly ambitious person, the concept of intentionally operating at 85% sounds terrifying.
It sounds like quitting to them.
It does.
Yeah.
They equate leaving 15% in the tank with being lazy or failing to live up to their maximum potential. How do you bypass the profound, socially conditioned guilt of resting?
It is a massive psychological hurdle. High achievers are historically terrible at resting because they view rest as the absence of productivity. But you have to completely reframe the math. Operating at 85% isn't about doing less over a 1-week period. It is about sustaining high performance over a 40-year period without snapping your suspension bridge.
It's the marathon versus sprint analogy.
Exactly. Plus, that 15% slack is what actually allows your brain to engage in diffuse thinking. It's where creativity, problem-solving, and serendipity actually happen.
And this brings us back to the role of AI, actually. If AI execution is plummeting in cost, perhaps we stop viewing AI as a threat to our jobs and start viewing it as the ultimate shock absorber.
That is a brilliant synthesis. AI might be the exact tool that finally permits ambitious people to comfortably achieve that 85% state.
Yeah. If you deploy AI agents to handle the tedious logistical drudgery of your life, the calendar Tetris, the basic email drafting, the raw data synthesis, it absorbs the friction.
It clears your plate so you can focus your carefully guarded 85% energy exclusively on high-leverage human meaning-making.
So if we are running this complex, heavily diversified portfolio of a life, and we're intentionally keeping the engine throttled at 85% capacity, How on earth do we actually grade our performance?
Because the old metrics don't work anymore.
Right. The traditional corporate scorecard of maximizing your salary, chasing the corner office, and upgrading your job title is completely irrelevant in this framework. We have to entirely redefine the metrics of success, happiness, and love.
Christina manages this complex grading process through a tool she developed called the Personal Balanced Scorecard. Because she has operated on an academic schedule since she was in college, she runs her personal fiscal year from July to June.
Which, as a side note, is a wildly practical hack for anyone with a family. Attempting to set profound, life-altering resolutions in the first week of January is a recipe for failure.
Oh, it's the worst time of year to do it.
December is pure, unadulterated chaos. You have holiday parties, end-of-year corporate sprints, the kids are hyped up on sugar and out of school for 2 weeks, and you inevitably stumble into January completely depleted. Setting your goals in the quiet, slower pace of July makes infinitely more sense.
Exactly. So in July, she sits down and outlines her strategic goals across several distinct verticals. Professional milestones, financial targets, physical health, relationship maintenance, and creative projects.
And the critical rule for these goals is that they must be binary.
Yes or no?
Did you launch the podcast or didn't you? Did you hit the savings target or didn't you? There is no partial credit. She conducts a mid-year audit at the 6-month mark in January to recalibrate if necessary, and then finalizes the grades in June.
But the sheer genius of this scorecard isn't the tracking of the goals themselves. It is the fail-safe mechanism at the very bottom. She treats it like a checksum in a complex financial spreadsheet, a final calculation to ensure the underlying logic holds true.
The checksum question at the bottom of her scorecard is simply, are you happy?
And how she defines happiness is incredibly stripped down and grounded. It is fundamentally a vibes check. Her definition of a happy year is simply, did you experience more good days than bad days?
And to differentiate between a good day and a bad day, she uses this perfect analogy of physical exertion.
I love this analogy.
Imagine you go to the gym and you do an insanely difficult, grueling workout. The trainer is pushing you to your absolute limit, your muscles are screaming, you are dripping with sweat. You come home, pour yourself into bed, and you can barely move your arms.
That's awful.
But beneath the exhaustion, you feel a deep sense of accomplishment and growth. That is what she calls a good hurt. That counts as a good day, even though it was objectively a struggle.
Now contrast that physical state with the experience of getting hit by a motorcycle.
Oof.
You are rushed to the ER, you are bruised, battered, and traumatized. You eventually get home, pour yourself into bed, and you can barely move your arms. On a purely physiological level, your body is experiencing a very similar amount of pain and exhaustion as the gym workout.
But the vibe is entirely different.
The internal vibe, the narrative of the pain, is entirely destructive. That is a bad hurt. That was undeniably a bad day.
The profound level of self-awareness required for this system kicks in right here. Because it is entirely possible to look at your balanced scorecard, see green check marks all the way down the page, you hit your revenue numbers, you got the promotion, you ran the half marathon, and still genuinely answer no to the checksum question of, are you happy?
Which is the most terrifying but valuable revelation a person can have.
It means you're winning the wrong game.
Exactly. If you achieve all your goals but you are miserable, it proves that you are acing tests that do not matter. You are efficiently executing a strategy that is actively hostile to your own well-being.
Conversely, you might miss half your financial targets, but answer yes to the checksum.
Which simply means you need to sit down and have a very honest conversation with yourself about why you are arbitrarily setting goals that have no bearing on your actual happiness.
She also talks about how her definition of success has morphed dramatically over the decades. When she was in her 20s, her primary driver was external validation.
Same for most of us.
She cared deeply about what other people thought of her trajectory. In her 30s, she was consumed by the desire to be viewed as impressive by society, to live up to the massive burden of her own potential.
But
Now, operating in her 40s, success has been radically simplified. Success is simply making beautiful, interesting work on her own terms. She recently received her 5th Tony nomination as a producer, but she explicitly states that she would be just as deeply proud of the theatrical work even if the statues and the public accolades didn't exist.
if the work pays the mortgage and fulfills her creative drive, she no longer cares if society at large finds it impressive.
And she applies that exact same intense intentionality to her definition of love. She strips away the fairy tale romance and defines love with aggressive practicality. Her husband is simply her absolute favorite person in the world to talk to about any subject.
which they actively protect. They made a conscious verbal agreement early in their marriage to never allow their relationship to devolve into a mere logistical partnership focused exclusively on managing the kids.
They're actively defending against the empty nest divorce trap.
It is a tragically common phenomenon. A couple spends 18 years communicating almost exclusively about the logistics of child-rearing. Who is handling the carpool, who is paying the orthodontist, who is helping with the science project.
And then?
Then the youngest child leaves for college. The couple sits down at the dinner table, looks across at each other, and realizes they haven't had a genuine conversation about their own inner lives in 2 decades. They have nothing left to say.
That's heartbreaking.
It is. Christina and her husband prioritize their intellectual fascination with each other as distinct individuals, not just as co-managers of a household.
And the incredible thing is, she even applied her systematic analytical mindset to the process of finding him in the first place. She utilized a system she invented called the zero-date method.
She essentially treated modern dating like a highly optimized B2B sales funnel.
She actually delivered a TED Talk on this exact methodology. It proves that even the most seemingly magical, serendipitous aspects of the human experience, like falling in love, can be wildly optimized if you have absolute clarity on what your non-negotiable data points are.
So if we step back from all the specific tactics and look at the philosophical core of what this means for you, the listener, there is a common critique of this mindset.
What's the critique?
Some people argue that defining your happiness merely as vibes and aiming for more good days than bad is setting the bar far too low. They ask, where is the grand overarching purpose? Where is the pursuit of greatness?
Does it lower the bar for a well-lived life?
It doesn't lower the bar, it grounds the bar in reality. We have a cultural epidemic of deferred happiness. People tell themselves a story. I will finally be happy when I sell my startup, or I will be happy when I make partner at the law firm, or I will be happy when I hit $2 million in the bank.
They delay living.
They're willing to endure thousands of miserable, bad, hurt days in the present, trading their current reality for a mythical future milestone that may never arrive. And if it does arrive, often feels completely hollow.
Wow.
Optimizing your life to ensure that this current Tuesday afternoon is a good day forces you to actively inhabit your actual life, rather than living as a hostage to a fantasy of your future self.
Which brings us to the culmination of a truly massive journey today. We started by staring down the very real existential danger of maintaining a one-job mindset in an era where AI is driving the cost of execution to zero.
We saw how the antidote is to build an anti-fragile, multi-dimensional suspension bridge, a human Venn diagram.
We dissected the mechanics of how to extract data from a catastrophic failure using a 70-person advisory board, why you must forcefully throttle your life's engine back to 85% capacity to survive the long haul, and how to entirely rewrite the scorecard of your life to prioritize actual daily happiness over performative success.
And so, to you, the listener, we challenge you to audit your own reality this week. Look closely at your own Venn diagram. What are the unique, weird, orthogonal skills that only you possess at that specific intersection?
Open up your calendar right now. What system in your life are you currently running at 100% capacity that desperately needs to be scaled back to 85% before it breaks? And look honestly at your goals for the year. Are you exhausting yourself to ace tests that don't actually matter to your checksum?
And we want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to wrestle with long after this deep dive ends. We talked extensively today about how human storytelling, our unique ability to weave emotional meaning out of the chaos of data, is our ultimate defensible moat against artificial intelligence.
We feel safe believing that we are the ultimate storytellers of our own lives.
But as we increasingly invite AI agents into the most intimate aspects of our operations, using them to manage our schedules, summarize our most personal communications, and even look at the raw data of our lives to tell us what our own patterns are, what happens to our human identity when the AI eventually becomes capable of telling our own story back to us better than we can.
Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
We'll catch you on the next one.